Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for listening and welcome back to another episode of the Business Owners Freedom Formula Show, where we chat with inspiring entrepreneurs and dig into their highs, lows, and everything in between of their business building journey and learn about how they've been able to achieve ultimate freedom. In today's episode number 13, we have another great guest with us here today, and we're going to jump right in. So we have Scott Anthony Barlow. He is the founder of Happen to Your Career, a company that helps you stop doing work that doesn't fit, figure out what does, and then teach you to make it happen. He has been helping people develop their careers in business for over 10 years as a human resource leader, business development expert, and career coach. With over 2,000 interviews worth of experience from his HR career, Scott interviews other people telling stories of finding work they love on Happen to Your Career podcast. Scott and his wife, Alyssa, have 3 children and live in Moses Lake, Washington. So that is Scott Barlow from Happen to Your Career. Welcome, Scott. What's going on?
All kinds of good stuff. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. And we've rescheduled a couple of times. I couldn't make it back to the studio one time, so I appreciate that we could get this together and make it work. Thank you.
Yeah, I am glad you're here. I really appreciate you being here, taking some time out of your day. I think our listeners are going to get a lot out of this based on what you do, where you've been. So give us a little bit of background into where your whole career started, and a little bit about the journey, because just like every entrepreneur's journey, it's not as pretty as people probably think. So kind of dig into that and how you got started with this originally.
Yes, it always looks different from the inside compared to the outside, as it turns out. So for me, this is not my first business. I actually had my first business in college when I was trying to figure out what the heck do I want to do with my life. So I guess careful what happens when you ask for that question, because I ended up, I was going through a business school at the time, and I was looking at all the internships that were available, and they sounded terrible. Like they sounded like you don't really do anything. Like you go to the company and, maybe if you're lucky, you get to get the boss coffee or whatever else. And they sounded like truly terrible internships. So I instead started looking for something else. And that's where I came home with a small business. And my first business was a contracting business. And I was, 21, I think at the time, 21 years old at the time. And it was, it was a huge learning curve. I didn't know anything about it, and it was thrust into the world of contracting. We did mostly exterior painting and things like that, which I don't know that I wish on anybody as a business, but I had a lot of fun just because of what I got out of it, and
right.
Have that learning curve for what it actually takes to run and own and manage a business and be able to grow it and scale it. And at the height of that thing, we had about 22, 25, 26 employees, someplace in there. I can't quite remember, but yeah, so that's where it all started. And then I ended up leaving that. I actually sold the business when I left college, and it kind of paid my way, bought my wife's engagement ring, and we moved.
It's always nice.
Yeah, it worked out really, really well. And I mean, we put, I don't know, it was a small business. We put like a little under $400,000 or something through that business, which at the time when you're 21, it's like, might as well be
pretty impressive.
Millions of dollars for what I thought at the time. But yeah, we sold it off and all the equipment and everything with it, and then took off to Portland, Oregon, and I got my first job. And
all right. How'd that go?
It was terrible. Not because jobs are terrible necessarily. It's just, it was a really bad fit for me. I didn't like it at all. It was bad alignment. And I ended up making a bunch of career changes and went from company to company, and did actually find several companies that I really, really enjoyed working with. Just absolutely loved it. Really supported bosses, all kinds of stuff like that. And I got a whole bunch of promotions and raises along the way. And what happened is a lot of the people that I was working with were starting to ask me, hey, how did you do this? Like, how did you make so many career changes? Like I think at the time I was, 27 years old or something. And then moving into senior management and on up, and then, getting into executive type roles, and be like, how did you do this? And so I was going and having coffee with people and just telling them how I did this. They liked coffee, and I would tell them how to go and do it, and they would do it. And that is literally how it started. I started doing career coaching out of that. Like, I like coffee, and they wanted how to get a new job.
They bought you coffee, and you had information that they wanted.
that was it. And people started offering to pay. And at that same point in time, I was really missing owning my own business. So I was starting to look at, hey, what would I do for my next business? And it's like, oh, wait, there's these people already over here. They're offering to pay me. Like clearly they're getting something out of it. So that's where it was born.
Very cool. So how long have you been at it now?
Geez, I guess it's been 4 going on 5 years.
Awesome. So when you got started, obviously, like we said, everything looks good from the outside in, but inside out, when you got started, what was it like making that shift from more or less a hobby to all of a sudden you are really good at this when people want to start paying you, to then making that transition out of the corporate world to then really scaling it so it can support, you, your family, and really what you wanted to get out of it?
We have unfortunately, but really fortunately done more things wrong than we've done right. We've done a few things really, really well and a few things really, really right. And that's what's paid off for us. But most things we've done really terribly. And, we brought on first clients and did that part really well and had clients from nearly day one. But, later on, I was making pretty good money, and we didn't really want to like sell our house and move to a apartment or something along those lines. We didn't want to give up our lifestyle. So my wife and I had decided, look, we're not making this transition unless we meet these goals. And we'd set out income goals, amount that we wanted to have inside savings, and all these other things, right? So that we could make it a minimal stress transition. And I thought that was going to take about 9 months, and it ended up taking like 2.5 years. And there was a point along the way, about a year and a half in, where we're kind of trucking along, like bringing in, I don't know, it wasn't a lot. It was like $2,000 or something a month. Like certainly not enough to make a living on. I remember we had 1 month in there where it was like $3,000. We're like, yes,
50% growth.
Yeah, 50% growth, but still nowhere near what we needed to be able to make
right.
it. So after trucking along for a year and a half plus, my wife kind of looked at me and she's like, at what point are you going to give this up? And like, where do we cross the line where, because I'm working weekends and I'm doing
right.
to make this happen.
Still working your full-time job, still being a husband, being that guy, and then also running your side business.
Exactly. All of those things all at once. And so we kind of had a really difficult period of time in there where it's like, oh my goodness, how is this going to happen? And we decided, look, if we go another 12 months this way and we aren't making the amount of money and not in a position to switch, then we'll give it up as an experiment. So that was all the motivation I needed.
Right.
And it's like, okay, this needs to happen. This is what I want to do. So it was, I kind of gloss over that, but that was actually really difficult, and kind of the mental and emotional shift that went along with that was really, really difficult for me, and realizing that, all of this work that I put into this for very little money might not pay off.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I think that's really important for any entrepreneur out there, because when you do start your business, unless you just quit your job and jump in and you have that, cushion to do it, there's that tipping point of like, I'm doing this full time. I'm running another business more or less full time. When can I make that break? And some people think there's just overnight successes because you see it on social media. But you're proof, and now you help others do it, that you're running a successful business now. But if you watched the journey, you'd have been like, what is this guy doing? It's really inspiring, the fact that, I believe if you believe in your business and you believe it works, it just takes that patience to get over that hump. Because now once you get over that hump, then things really start to take off, and you kind of get that momentum. So when you did that within 12 months, then kind of what happened there? Did it just start taking off and you quit your job?
It was at that inflection point, I realized, look, I'm going to have to do some things drastically differently than what I thought was going to happen. So, and I know we're going to talk about systems and some other things here, and other things that might be really helpful to people that are at those points. But for me, I had to take a look at a business where I thought I'd put some decent systems in place, and we'd we brought on some other people to be able to help support it, just very, very, very part-time. And I couldn't do everything, obviously, even though it wasn't mass amounts of customers, but we still had customer support, and we still had stuff that we had to deliver for those customers on top of, going and marketing and finding new customers and everything that goes along with that. So, it became initially a month long of me going, okay, look, what are we going to cut out here? What are we going to do differently? How are we going to automate some of this stuff? Because I can't continue trooping along doing a 50-hour-a-week job and at the same time being able to work 30 plus hours a week on my side gig, right? That's not producing that much. So actually ended up doing a couple of different things. Ended up putting a whole bunch of systems in place into my day job that took it down from about 50 hours a week to about roughly 25, 27 hours a week, where I was spending actually doing work. And then I was, in doing so, actually did a better job for the company by putting those systems in place. So I wish I would have done that a long time ago. Less room
for error.
Yeah, exactly. And then the other side of it was I did the same thing for my own business. And we've got a lot of different examples of those, but one thing that jumps to mind was we started this off as a really, really personal interaction type business. And I was adamant that some things would have to be done by me.
Right.
And some things just must have that level of personal interaction. And one of those things where kind of happened at that inflection point is I had started maybe 2 months before that sending out a personal email to people who were subscribing to this free email course. And I was following up and I realized, I'm basically copying and pasting the same thing.
Anyway, so you might as well automate it.
Yeah. But so the thought process initially was, look, if it comes from my personal email account, then it's going to be more genuine, more personal. And that's what that's the message we want to send for our company type thing. But then I was sort of forced and backed into a corner to automate it. And we realized that, look, I went from a 20% response to like 38, 40% response rate by automating it because it was serving the customer better.
Right.
Or potential customer better. And
very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's part of it was mental, and part of it was actually taking the time to move past those mental barriers and set up just the little things like that were taking time that really didn't need to be done by a small business CEO.
Right. And I think that's really one of the big things. Once you kind of shift your mindset of always thinking about how can I systematize this? How can I automate it? How can I delegate it? Then once you see, like for me, the same way with my last business, getting over that first delegation hump was like the hardest thing ever. It's your baby, you built it, nobody can do it as good as you.
Yeah.
But if you have a system to make it happen as good as you, whether or not you're there, then it's like you said, even in your job, you're serving your company better by working less because you actually had systems in place. And I think that's, once you get over that hump and you see it works, it really does make it easier. So I think that's a really good segue into now kind of shifting to the customers you actually serve, because I think a lot of our listeners can get a lot out of that. When you're working with your customers and your clients and getting them to do things they love, what have you found to be kind of the biggest hurdle from getting them to a place where they're, down and out and nothing's working, to making that shift to doing what they love?
Well, I think that the common thread is that we have a tendency to hold ourselves back in the same way that I was holding myself back in just some of the situations that we just talked about and that kind of progression. But I think that there's a mental shift that goes on for everybody, and it happens in different places. But the first of which is realizing and changing your outlook to realize that just about anything that you want to do and think is worth doing, there's probably a way to figure out how to do it. And you might just not know it yet. So that is something that I have, and to the point where actually still to this day, we talk to our kids about this thing, but inserting into our vocabulary, I don't know the answer yet. And that might sound like a small thing, and that's very, kind of fuzzy, I guess, in some way. But that was a big tactical thing that I started doing, and my wife and I were talking about that, and clearly it's still pervasive at the dinner table and things like that now. But just when I would feel, that sort of overwhelm creep up on me, and it's like, oh crap, there's no way to do this, then that's where I would use that as a trigger, like a mental trigger, almost a red flag or a bell going off in the back of my head saying, ding, 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 ding. You're feeling like this is overwhelmed. Okay, let's reframe this to, you just don't know the answer yet.
Yeah.
And then it becomes under what circumstances would this be possible?
Awesome. And even when I'm talking with business owners on a day-to-day basis, there's really now, with the power of the internet, yes, you can get the answer to anything now, but there's almost information overload, and then when you get stuck in your own thing and you're just grinding, I think it really does help to have that sounding board, have that other person that has that different perspective. And then it's like, oh, I never even thought of it that way. So I think, with what you're doing with them, having them shift their mindset, I kind of see it on the same end with me. It's just, when I'm working with clients and they're, it's hard to take this first step because I don't even know where to start and I don't know what I don't know yet. And I think that's a pretty cool way to put it. I've never thought of it that way. But I think our listeners will definitely get something out of that. So,
and yeah, we do a lot, to answer your question directly, we do a lot of that with our clients, regardless of whether, because we help people make career changes. Some of the time that's a new job. Some of that time is starting their business. For a lot of people, the first business that they've ever had.
Right.
And that is something that consistently comes up in terms of overcoming those limitations. Because if they're doing something differently than they've done, which often many of us haven't had work that we just absolutely can't wait to get up in the morning for, or have run a business in a way that just feels very, very fulfilling and is producing the income that you need and is be able to create a good perception for how you want to show up in the world and all that stuff that goes along with it. And that means we're going to have to go through a pattern of behavior change.
Right.
So that's just one small way that we do that. In fact, really recent example. One of the guys we're helping grow I guess you could call it an education and consulting business. He's got a company, a very small company, where we're just helping him get his first contracts with rather large education institutions, particularly coding schools.
Okay.
And he's never done this before at all. So he came to, he's like, hey, is this even realistic? Like, just tell me. It's like, no. It absolutely is, but you don't know the answer yet. So that's how that works. And then like 45 days later, he ended up getting a $16,000 contract. And then he's set up now, positioned to likely reach his goal of getting a $50,000 contract here pretty quick. So
wow, nice work.
Well, he's done all the work, but
right. It's just, sometimes it's just those small shifts of, you go from overwhelmed to, hey, let's take it one step at a time. And it's totally possible,
absolutely.
You see all the success stories and it's like, how did they get there? Well, just think at one point in that person's successful career, they were exactly where you were. Like, where you were, nobody sees that you were working 30 to 40 hours a week on a side business for 2.5 years, but now it's come to fruition. So I think just taking those small steps and compartmentalizing them, that it is possible with a little bit of patience and persistence. So kind of touching on that with all of the people that you're working with, what are some of the, biggest breakthroughs you see from people going from a 9 to 5 that they dread to being their own boss and really, finally finding that passion and fire to build a business that they really love?
I think the single biggest breakthrough that is often the hardest for people can be paying some kind of money, however small in some cases, to be able to free up their bandwidth to focus on more important things. So sometimes for people, that's hiring like a $50 a month virtual assistant, right, or somebody like extreme. We're talking very little money, very part-time, but that's still whether it's that or whether it's, paying $1,500 a month or, several $1,000s a month to be able to bring on somebody that's going to take on an even more specific type role. But it's kind of the same mental transition for a lot of people. And it goes from, it often, once you do that and once you make that shift and once you have done that, it makes that change that you were talking about earlier much more upfront, in your face, realistic, that, hey, look, this is a business. It's not a hobby. You can enjoy your business. And in fact, I found that when you do that really well and you put yourself in front of the things that you do the very best, and then be able to get other people and other resources, in some cases, computers and software and automation and other things like that, to do the things that they do the best, then you end up having more fun. But more importantly, it's that, now you've gone pro, for lack of better words.
Right.
Now for the life of me, I'm looking at my bookshelf. That's a quote out of a book, Turning Pro. Who wrote that? Oh, Stephen Pressfield. There you go.
There you go. Cool.
Yeah.
We'll link that up as well. Haven't checked that one out. So I think that, I see the same thing. It's, really, I think business owners and even people just starting their business, they don't necessarily see how much value their time is. Where you said you can pay a virtual assistant $50 a month to do 10 hours of really good work, which then you can take that 10 hours and spend it on things that are probably worth several $100s an hour. So it's really kind of valuing your time and then making that choice of, do I spend this $50 on going out to dinner tonight, or do I spend this $50 on a virtual assistant who then can get me to where I want to go much quicker? And I think time is the most valuable asset. You can never get more of it, but sometimes it's just harder to value when money is leaving your pocket in doing so. So I think that's a pretty big breakthrough. I can imagine.
Well, there's really small ways that you can do that too. Like one of the things I was doing, I was trying to run this business on, I was looking over here because I thought maybe we still actually had the computer, but maybe we don't have it in, on this little laptop, little 13-inch laptop that when I bought it was great at the time. But then when I started this business, it was a few years old and it was kind of running pretty slow. So eventually I justified to myself and made the mental switch. It's like, oh my goodness, like I only have 20 something hours a week to be able to focus in on the business. And right now I'm spending what feels like, it probably wasn't realistically, but what felt like half of that time waiting for that. Like this is stupid. So instead, ended up, even though it was very uncomfortable for me, paid $3,000 for the fastest MacBook that they had. And it was probably one of the better decisions I made, because all of a sudden I now had literally twice the output.
Right.
So it can be very, very small things like that.
Yeah. And I could second that. When I worked in the corporate world, I always had 2 or 3 monitors. And then I started my own business. I had 1 monitor for the longest time. And I wanted a second one, but I didn't want to spend the $100 or whatever it was to get the second one. And then finally you make the switch. I'm going to spend $100. And now it's like,
why did I?
Yeah. Why didn't I do this many years ago? So definitely can understand there with letting go of a couple bucks to really speed up your output. So kind of fast forwarding now, what does the normal day in the life of Scott look like today?
Oh my goodness. I was going to pull up my calendar. It's probably easier for me to just.
So you have a good calendar. You protect your time. That's always a good system to have.
Yeah. And actually I am not particularly great at it. So my partner in crime, Alyssa, she is phenomenal at that type of stuff. And we're a business that teaches people to spend their time in the areas that they love and that they're phenomenal at. So she actually, for lack of a better phrase, controls my calendar. So it looks like, if I'm looking at here, I don't necessarily have an average day. I probably have more of an average week, but I have, at this point, we've got a team of 7. We're just about to hire 2 more people here in the next 30 days. We're doing interviews right now. So most of my day now is spent, about half of it, I would say, depending on the day, is spent supporting my team and making sure that they have what they need so that they can go knock it out of the park, and that they can do the things that, quite frankly, I'm not that great at. Yeah.
Perfect. And I think, as you build a business, and it's really switching from, if you go back to the E-Myth, working in your business to working on your business, being a leader and providing the tools and support and systems for those people to do their job better than you could do it, because 1, they're probably better at it, and 2, they actually like it and you probably don't like it. So, giving up the control, allowing them to do it. So where is your team located? Do you have a whole virtual team all across the map?
Yeah, we're all over the place. So, one of our coaches is in DC, the other's in Atlanta. Let's see, our podcast manager is in Oklahoma. Let's see, who am I missing? Alyssa
is in the same house as you.
In my house. As it turns out, that's my wife. And then, geez, who am I missing? We are, let's see, DC, Oklahoma, Colorado. And yeah, we're kind of all spread across the entire United States.
Very cool. So what kind of systems do you have in place? One, to manage the team, because you're all in different time zones all over the map, the beauty of the internet and everything staying connected. And then how do you make sure those, coordinate with making sure your clients have a great experience?
To be honest, this may or may not sound like a system, but I believe that it is a system. One of the things that we do for anything that we are asking our team to do, or that we are taking on as a project, or that they're proposing as a project, or anything else, is we identify what are the results that we want to achieve first. So part of our system is that is the progression that we go through, and we say, okay, what is essentially the scope of this, and what are the results that we're looking to obtain? And we build that into literally everything that we do. Well, probably not literally, but very close to literally everything that we do. To the point where when I'm bringing on those 2 new people, one of the things that I've done is detail out what are the results that they need to achieve. And we call those key results areas, which I didn't make up, but
sounds good.
Yeah. And they understand before they come onto the role what specifically they're going to be expected to do. And when I don't want to spend my time continually reorienting and fixing mistakes and having to clarify the mission continually, then it saves so much time by doing that up front. And so that's a I guess you could say system within a system, if you want to look at it.
Right.
But some of the other systems that we use, and some of the more maybe practical or applicable things, are we use lots of automation to do. In fact, one of our values as a company is anything that a human doesn't need to do, we want a computer to do. So we automate a lot of stuff. But one of our other values is we want to come across very incredibly, ridiculously personable, because we actually care. And those 2 things sometimes are at conflict. So right. One of the things that we've done is we realized that, look, we're bringing on lots of coaching clients. We're having, we had an uptick in coaching applications, and it didn't make sense necessarily for Alyssa, who it turns out, like, we've also got a family, and we didn't want to have her rush to the computer every single time a coaching application came in. So now everybody gets literally a personal email from Alyssa that is modified. It adjusts to the person based on what criteria that they've put in.
Wow.
And then they get a personal scheduling email saying, hey, here's what we do. Here's where you can schedule. Here's how that looks. And then it's got all the people's information substituted in. So we've set that up. It's been very, very easy to do it. We just never took the time before, if you would ask me a year ago.
Right.
And, we used a combination of Typeform, which is basically just like a survey type company, which we use and love because it's also very personal. And then Gmail, which it comes directly from Alyssa's Gmail, and then Zapier.
Zaps are nice.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So those all talk to each other, and then it does its thing without Alyssa ever having to touch it. And then she can just go in and follow up later,
right,
and see if they haven't scheduled for some reason or another, and then offer even more personal help.
Very cool. And I mean, the 3 key takeaways I took out of that is, 1, figuring out where you want to be first, and then working your way backwards. It's a lot easier when you know what your end goal is, instead of just kind of aimlessly trying to keep the ship afloat and not really knowing what you're supposed to do. Especially when you're bringing on team members, if they don't know what they're supposed to do, they're going to try and improvise, which is not their fault. They don't have any other direction. And then all of a sudden things get screwed up. Clients are unhappy, and then it's a whole mess. So I think, figure out where you want to be, and then work your way backwards, figure out how to get there. And then all of a sudden, here's day 1, and this is going to be the first step. And then the second part that I really liked was, basically, in my opinion, any service, any business is really, it's really a commodity at this point. So when you can provide that personal customer experience to set yourself apart, whether you use technology to do it or you do it personally, obviously I would love technology to do it if possible, which you've set up. And I think that's really the key to set yourself apart. We want this to be the best experience, personal experience. We care about our clients. And when you put your clients and customers first, the bottom line will take care of itself. If you put the bottom line first, the other thing's not going to happen and the bottom line is going to fall apart. So those are really, I think anybody can take a lot away from there. And then really the last thing that you said was, you could have always done this, you just never took the time. And a lot of people I talk to, and I'm sure you see the same, is I know I could do it, but doing it this way is just fine. And why do I want to take the time to do this when I could just do it on my own? And then when you actually take the time to do it, and I was just talking to a client this morning, it's like, this is great. I finally took the time to put in some training videos for my staff. And now they never come and bother me again. Like, it's beautiful. Like, you know, they don't need to know, hey, what happens when this happens? Or, hey, I don't know how to do this. It's like, here's a video. And then when you figure it out, somebody else will have the same question and then they learn. So I think, you know, really taking the time, look at it as an investment to put those systems in place. And then it's going to free up your time to do other things that you actually like doing, which I think kind of segues into our last part of, you know, you've built this business, your family's involved, your kids are getting older. So what is your ideal view of freedom, and how are you and Alyssa making sure that you achieve that on a daily basis?
You know, we talk about this a lot. In fact, we went to dinner last night and we're talking about this specific topic. Yes, we're weirdos. This is what we talk about at dinner. I know that, I'm okay with it. It is A-okay here. I'm kind of looking to the right here because I actually keep in front of me exactly that. I've got a document that I detailed out several years ago, and I've made small modifications along the way, but really all it is, I'm going to use the term visioning because that's probably the closest thing to describe it, if you're familiar with that, which is basically just looking into the future, for lack of a better phrase, and saying, okay, what do I want the future to look like? Let's push off all the stuff that I think could happen or should happen or that I should do or could do or maybe need to do or whatever else. And then instead almost take if you have a finance background, a zero-based budgeting type approach.
There you go.
And, you know, that's what I love to look at things that way, whether it's brainstorming a new project or whether it is, you know, what we want to accomplish in the future with our business or our personal lives as well. And for ours, they're so intertwined. And I think that for everybody, one affects the other anyways. So
right.
Might as well not look at them separate. But, you know, some of the things that I have on here are kind of detailed out. Hey, here's what the future business looks like. Here's what at the time, and this has been a couple of years ago, 5 years from now, the business looks like. And then I also detailed out what my ideal, or some people call this is not an exercise that's specific to me, but sometimes you'll hear it called the perfect day exercise or ideal day exercise.
Yep.
And I think that combination of the three for me has really helped me focus on what I want to have in the future. And the reason I keep this so close by is because every time I look at it, even if I'm not reading the individual words, it reminds me of what my North Star is. And, you know, I've got a ton of stuff on here, and everything from, you know, describing my perfect day and what that looks like, and, you know, what my routine is to get up in the morning and how I'm spending my time, and some of the conversations that I'm having with my kids and my team, and all the way to, hey, here's some of our revenue goals, to what I'd like to see and why those are important to me. So there's a lot built into this, but that really gives me my ideal idea of freedom. And the way that I would describe that is being able to make the impact that I want to make versus being perpetually worried about either what I should do, could do, or have to do.
Awesome. And I mean, that's great. I mean, kind of going back to what we said before, working backwards, what is your end goal with this business, and how are you going to use that business or your career, whatever it might be, to get you to that point? And, you know, it might be that you've intertwined your family and work and everything together. And some people might say, well, that's crazy because you're working 24/7, but, you know, really you got a team to help you, but also you're serving people, which makes it gratifying, which makes it not feel like work. It gives you that freedom. So everybody's ideal view of freedom is different. And I think when you map it out and you see it, even going back to when you started, you said, well, in 12 months, I got to be here or else. When you have it written down in front of you, it's like, I got to make that happen, And so, I mean, that's really, I think a lot of our listeners will get out of that. It's really just figure out where you want to go, figure out how you're going to get there. If you need help, everybody's there to help. It's kind of like you said, yet. We don't know that answer yet, but there's somebody out there that can help you get to where you want to go. I love masterminding. I love talking to other people. I love podcasts because you learn all these things and then you always tweaking. Oh, I can get there a little bit quicker. Oh, I can do this. So, really encourage everybody to kind of map that out. So what are kind of the future plans for you and, the business?
Well, I was actually just thinking about this. Like one of the things that it says on here, it says, we live in Moses Lake, Washington, and we run an internet-based business. So we're good there. We've already made that happen. This is kind of my 5 years from now, which was written in, when did I write this? 2014, I want to say. So this is, like 2.5-ish years
Halfway
ago.
there.
Yeah. The 12 people that we employ want to work for us because we practice what we preach, and people should work in areas of what we call signature strengths and fulfill their potential while leveraging technology and software to do much of the rest. So I guess we're still good there. Now that
you're good. Yeah. You've said you got what, seven people on staff, bringing some more on. And you might be past 12 by 2019.
Oh my goodness. That's kind of crazy. I actually hadn't read that part in a while, to be honest with you. So I guess we're starting to come along. But one of the things that was really important to us, kind of giving you a summary, is we wanted to be able to work from anywhere, not in the like work from the beach type sort of way, like with the laptop. Like I don't know if anybody in any of those pictures you see on the internet has.
Is that actually real?
Yeah. Like I can't see my laptop when I'm sitting there.
And do they have Wi-Fi out there?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I don't think that that's real. But for me, initially, that was being able to work at home and then just be able to be there for not just the big things for my kids, because I've been really fortunate that I've been able to like go to the school plays and stuff like that for a very long time for my career, but also the little things like being able to pop into their school randomly.
Right.
or go to their soccer practice when there's no other dads there and it's just all stay-at-home moms that are or whatever it happens to be. I wanted to be there for those little things too. So that's part of what it meant to me, but it's evolved into, now we take about a month every year. We just actually, that's part of what my wife and I were talking about last night. We're going to go to England for this next year. In the UK actually specifically. So we'll hit up Ireland, Scotland, and be able to work and play and take the kids on different experiences that they're just not going to get exposed to otherwise. We just did that in Portugal and France. I think we got back in early February.
Nice.
January, someplace there, and spent 6 weeks over there at that time. And that's things like that are really important to us to be able to have those types of experiences and model that, not just for our kids, but for the rest of the world that wants to work in their own particular way too, whatever that is for them. As you called out earlier, it's different.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really getting back to what is your ideal view of freedom. And, a lot of people have that same aspiration. I don't want to bring my laptop and work at the beach, but I want to have the ability to have my business working because I've put systems and processes and people in place to implement them. So then I can take off for 6 weeks, and go to France or go to Scotland, go to England. I have access to email. My people know how to get in touch with me. I can still do coaching calls, but then I can also go out and enjoy the city for the day or whatever. And I know revenue is going to continue to come in. And I think that's possible for no matter if you have a brick and mortar, you have a service-based business, or you have an online business. You can do it. It's just a matter of taking the time, like we said before, and investing in putting those systems and processes and then eventually people in place. So that is awesome. Hopefully you enjoy that trip and don't have to work too much over there. So Scott, this has been great, but as you know, all good things do come to an end. I really appreciate you taking time and kind of sharing your journey and digging into the highs, lows, and all that good stuff. But we are all about freedom, and we don't want to take up too much of your time or our listeners' time. But before we sign off, it is time for our rapid recommendations for all things related to systems, automation, and freedom. So I've got 6 topics here. For everybody else out there, you know the drill. We got 6 things. We're going to give them to Scott, and he's going to give us one thing that he recommends you go check out later today. So what is one book that you recommend?
Only one. Actually one of my favorite books, and I'm looking back on my bookshelf, is The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey.
It really honestly is one of my favorite books, and it's made such an impact on my life. Speaking of freedom, I mean, that is part of how we were able to do what we needed to do by paying off just like $365,000 or something in debt. So
nice. And that is that will definitely get you freedom to leave that job and take that risk and jump into your business full time. So what is one quote that you and or Alyssa like to live by?
Oh, there are a lot, but there's actually, see if you can see it up here, but quote by Winston Churchill. At least supposedly it was by Winston Churchill. But I like to make things happen, or I like things to happen, and if they don't happen, I like to make them happen. So
awesome. That kind of goes along with what you tell your clients. Yes,
exactly.
If they haven't happened, you can make it happen. Thinking of tools, what is one tool that you guys like to use in your business?
We are such fans of Zapier. I talked to their CEO at one point before I realized that I was going to do this full time. I interviewed with their CEO, and he's just a great guy, and they make a really great product, and they allow us to do some of the things that we want to do. So that's one of them.
Cool. Definitely recommend all the listeners out there check that out. Zapier, if you haven't heard of it, I don't know how it works, but it basically connects any 2 systems, makes them talk to each other, and makes you not have to do any of that work. So we'll definitely link that up. What is one podcast that you like to listen to?
I love Freakonomics, actually. Freakonomics Radio with Stephen Dubner. And it's one of my favorites, hands down.
Awesome. We'll definitely link that up. What is one community that you like to hang out in, whether it's local community or online community?
I don't hang out in very many online communities, as weird as that sounds. I have in the past one paid community that was really, really helpful to my business and me personally, and my wife too, was a mastermind that formerly Jamie Tardy, now her name's Jamie Masters.
Yep.
She was my coach for a while, and she put together a phenomenal mastermind that I participated in for a while, and that helped me grow my business substantially.
Awesome. And I mean, that's probably one of those things where it's, making that investment as well, spending the money to then get a return on that investment and take your business where it could go much quicker, much higher than you ever imagined. So definitely whatever works for anybody out there, but definitely look into masterminds. There's a lot of great, paid masterminds out there. And Scott is obviously very successful helping others, but even the most successful people still need to invest in continuing. I like to live by the quote, you are the average of the 5 people that you spend most time with. And when you spend the time in masterminds like that, you're definitely going to get brought up. So we'll definitely link up Jamie Tardy, now Jamie Masters. And then before we go, what is one parting piece of advice for any business owner out there who is stuck, burned out, or just trying to get over the hump?
I would say that if you can identify what that North Star is, just like we talked about earlier, and then identify why it's so important to you, that's one of the things that's going to carry you through. That's one of the things that's going to cause you to be able, when you're stacked, 16 things deep, 16 projects deep with all kinds of other stuff, to be able to, stay up the extra hour to be able to automate something, or to be able to make it easier so that you can get up the next day and you can continue to progress. And it happens in little teeny tiny stair steps, the climb. And it always, there's 2 sides to that. One, you look at anybody from the outside and it always looks like that overnight success that you're talking about, the overnight success that's, I don't
impossible.
know, 5 or 10
Doesn't
years
happen.
running, 20 years running, whatever. But the other side of it is stuff happens and can happen a lot faster than you think. And my friend Mark Sieverkrop, who actually helped me get this business started early on, and has given me a ton of good advice, he one of the things that he says all the time is like, when you are looking back, it happens so much faster than than you thought that it could have or should have. But that's only evident looking backwards. And
when you're taking those little steps, it doesn't feel that way. But when you take a look back and you realize what you actually accomplished, as long as you're persistent, sometimes you'll surprise yourself there. So Scott Barlow, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to impart some of your knowledge, wisdom, and enthusiasm to our community. Hopefully this helps everyone out there get one step closer to achieving their ultimate freedom in your business and in life. But before we sign off, where can our listeners go to keep in touch with you?
Probably the best place is happentoyourcareer.com, or you can go over and listen to the podcast, Happen to Your Career. Search HTYC and it'll pop right up on any podcast player. But yeah, those are the best places. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this conversation has been great. I know our listeners will get a lot out of it. Really appreciate all the insight you gave, all the good nuggets, all the motivation to keep our listeners keep on going. So we'll definitely link up the website if you're busy out there and don't have time to write it down or type it out. Happentoyourcareer.com. Search HTYC in any podcast player. If you want to go hang out on Twitter, HTYCBiz. Or if you are a Facebook person, facebook.com/happentoyourcareer. So that is all. Stay tuned for next week's episode as we dive into another fantastic interview with Matt Miller with School Spirit Vending. And if you like what you're hearing, we'd always appreciate a friendly review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And be sure to do the same for the Happen to Your Career podcast as well. So that's all I got. Just a quick reminder, you can get all the show notes by going to our website, paulmaskill.com. And have you checked out our videos? All of our interviews are recorded on video, no edits, real and authentic. So you can check those out on Facebook and YouTube. So until next time, don't forget, join our free Facebook group at bizfreedomformula.com, where we can continue the conversation with like-minded entrepreneurs who are listening to the show and putting the plans in place to work less, make more, while increasing the value of their business, and most importantly, achieving that ultimate freedom. So until then, keep rocking, trust the process, and talk to you soon.